Coming up on Theater Talk.
I've often thought if you wanted to completely sabotage a Broadway opening night, go to an early preview of a Neil Simon play, for example. Figure out every single essential punchline, go on opening night and just go.
From New York City, this is Theater Talk. I'm Susan Haskins. Here with me is my co-host, Donna Hanover from Arts in the City. And it is such a special day that I have a second guest co-host, Jesse Green, co-chief drama critic of the New York Times, because we are joined by the splendid master actor, John Lithgow, recent Emmy winner, I will add, but who is appearing now at the American Airlines Theater in Stories by Heart, his wonderful one-man show. And here he is at Theater Talk. Welcome, John Lithgow.
Wonderful
Thank
to
you so
be
much
here,
for being
especially
here.
if you're going to say such nice things about me.
Well, speaking of saying nice things about you, Jesse Green wrote the review of your play.
I withdraw it.
No.
Whatever I said. I've often wanted to ask someone I've reviewed this kind of a question. The way I went about writing that review in part was to tell readers, you might think it's going to be this, but it turns out to be that. And assuming you even read that, do you get insulted by things like that?
Not at all. I think one of the challenges about this show from the very time, its very inception 10 years ago, was explaining to people what it is, because it's anomalous. I would take it to one-night stands around the country, and people would come to see it. I would fill up houses, but it was mainly to see the guy from Third Rock from the Sun. They didn't know what it was. Even in the course of the evening, I'm explaining what it is. So I was not surprised at all, and I thought it was a great compliment to us that we had won you over in the course of the evening. He wrote, I didn't know what to expect, and I wasn't exactly looking forward to it, or words to that effect.
Something to that effect.
And I think
it's a rhetorical device, but I think a lot of people were wondering, as you said, what is this and why should I go?
Yeah.
And I then proceeded, I hope, to tell them why.
One of the things that I felt, which you also wrote, was that some of the treasures is how this came to be. You're telling the story of your father being ill, and really in a depression because of that. And amazing, the actor in the family is the one who's free to go take care of him. And then you talk about trying to tell him stories as he told you when you were growing up.
You know, it's been interesting developing it over the years, because I've learned, almost because of what we're talking about right now, that I absolutely had to tell people immediately what this is. The first line is, what the hell is this? I'm like speaking the audience's thought. They don't know what they've come to see. And I say right up front, the two leading players in most of these stories are my old man and that old book. So immediately it becomes not just about me. It's about the subject of stories and how I got it from my father.
Say a little bit about your father and who he was.
Yes.
And his contribution.
Yes, Arthur Lithgow, he was a very unusual man. He was not from a theater family at all. He was from a kind of middle-class family in Melrose, Massachusetts, lost his dad when he was 4 years old, leaving his family destitute. He became the man of the house. Somewhere along the line, this fairly lonely, shy man found Shakespeare. And it was almost a lifeline for him. He went away to Antioch College in the Midwest in Ohio, returned there a few years after graduating and to join the faculty, and developed Shakespeare festivals, produced all of Shakespeare's plays in the course of an 8-year-long Antioch Shakespeare Festival, had a kind of crazy history of either quitting or being fired from several different sites, but continuing to do these festivals to the point where he created the Great Lakes Shakespeare Festival, now the Great Lakes Theater Festival in Cleveland, which has outlived him by about 15 years. It's been going on for 60 years now. So he was referred to more than once as the Johnny Appleseed of Shakespeare. He just took it to the Midwest.
And your family went along with
Where else could we go? And it was a family of 4 kids.
Yeah.
So it was a kind of knockabout gypsy wagon childhood, which figures in the play, in the piece.
Well, I think to clarify a bit for a second what the actual content of the play is, aside from telling some of the story of your father and how his storytelling to you eventually became your storytelling to him, the lion's share of the evening is you telling 2 of the stories that you learned nearly by heart, I suppose, as a kid, certainly by heart now. And they are...
Yes, my co-writers were Ring Lardner and P.G. Wodehouse. Ring Lardner's Haircut and P.G. Wodehouse's Uncle Fred Flits By. One is in Act 1, one is in Act 2. What they have in common is they are both in this book, Tellers of Tales, this big fat book of 100 stories that my father used to read to me and my siblings. And I use the actual book. I carry it on stage like a totemic object. I call it the Lithgow Family Bible. And I use that book I trick people into thinking, oh my gosh, he's just going to sit down and read stories to us all evening. But no, I turn them into kind of full-bore bravura acting pieces.
You start out as the barber in Haircut, and I have to tell you, you did this sort of annoying giggle. I can't do it, but that's, and I'm like, he is so charming, John Lithgow. Why is he laughing like that? He could laugh better than that. Obviously, you were doing the character, because this character gets darker and darker, unexpectedly.
The character doesn't change at all, but the context becomes very dark.
Yeah.
It works on the audience in a very unusual way because their perception of this man changes, even though he doesn't.
Well, we should say the story that he's relating to an imaginary barbershop client is one that at the beginning seems like just good old boys having fun in a small town, but as you say, gets darker and darker. People are mistreated, both as a matter of course, and also in specific and special and cruel ways. And there are dire consequences. So the man who doesn't change, by not changing, is being seen differently in terms of his culpability in this story.
Yeah, which you expressed extremely well in your review.
Better in the review than I did just now.
No, that's very good. I mean, the other major character in Haircut is a man who's been killed. You'll find out immediately he's been killed.
But your dad read this to you, and you loved it when you were 8 years old. That's a little heavy for an 8-year-old.
I know.
You think?
He was rather uncompromising. I think he was probably reading stories he wanted to hear himself, and we were along for the ride.
But you were seeing probably Macbeth and at the same time.
Yes, we saw gruesome stuff. My sister describes a marvelous moment where when she defines her childhood, she remembers opening the refrigerator door and seeing a severed head of my father. It was a latex head for the last scene in Macbeth. And they had put it in there for the rubber to set.
So when you started working on the show 10 years ago, I believe you only did the Woodhouse.
Yes.
And gradually you at some point added the Lardner. Did you ever consider any other stories?
I did. Actually, there was a period when I did a different story.
Oh, what was that?
And replaced Haircut. It was The Monkey's Paw, which really was our favorite story, this fantastic suspense story. It was an interesting sequence. Early on, I did 2 different shows, a Haircut show and an Uncle Fred show, and I ran them in a kind of repertory and then welded them together into one evening. I made the big mistake of doing Uncle Fred first and Haircut second, which left the evening on a very dark and bitter note. And it was troubling me. I felt something's wrong here. And instead of simply switching the order, I switched the order and replaced Haircut with The Monkey's Paw. And I thought, oh good, horror and suspense in the first act, blithe, outlandish farce in the second half. unfortunately, they were both in the same general cultural wheelhouse, two kind of fusty Edwardian households. And I was speaking in an English accent all evening. So I went back to haircut, but left it in that first position. And that's when the show suddenly made sense to me. So it was an interesting evolution over time.
And the Woodhouse was always part of it because that was, in fact, the story that kind of turned the key.
That was the inciting incident, yeah. In 2002, I was taking care of my mom and dad. My dad was very ill, and we were afraid of losing him. And he was very depressed. And it was an easy deduction. You had to either cheer him up or lose him. And I got the idea of reading them stories, and the first story they picked out of this big fat book was Uncle Fred Flits By, and it literally brought him back to life. So that was, and I tell that story as part of the piece.
It's fabulous.
Spoiler alert.
Can I just talk about that story for a minute? I had read it many years ago, and some of the subsequent stories in the same sequence. They don't seem naturally easy to read on stage or even bedside to children. And as I mentioned in the review, some of the sentences just take forever to find how they hold together. Does it feel that way when you're performing it, or that these are very difficult patterns of English to get out of your mouth?
Yes, indeed. I mean, it takes a lot of work to master it and a lot of concentration to execute it. It reminds me of playing Paganini or something. It's so fast and it's so precise, and it is hilariously funny unless you blow one syllable in an entire paragraph.
And have you done that?
Oh yeah, sure.
And it kills the laugh?
The laugh wilts at the end. Even if it's 7 or 8 seconds before you get to the key word, if you've made one little, it's quite interesting, the psychology of a laugh on stage.
Are you picking up motions or phraseology that your dad used in telling you the story when you were little?
I think unconsciously. I mean, people who knew him in the old days, it's like it's him up there. Genetics has a lot to do.
So what's the psychology of the laugh, you were to say?
It has to be so clean and so clear and precise. If you stumble over a syllable, if somebody coughs, a moment where you're accustomed to the audience laughing for 5 solid seconds just doesn't happen. So you don't have that 5 seconds to take a breath or to swallow and get all the saliva out of your mouth. It's extraordinary. Yeah, and you're thinking about these things. You hear a little laugh, you hear a little cough early on what's one of the rip-roaring Woodhouseian lines?
Well, there's that whole eel jellying business.
Right.
I picked one sentence that I could get quickly, but there's a much better one, much longer involved one. I don't know if you could.
Oh, yes, I think I can. How does it begin? Yes, he's been talking about... Yeah, I was only going to say that, have it your own way, Connie. I was only going to say that while the jury were probably compelled by the evidence submitted to them to give Cousin Alf Robbins the benefit of the doubt when charged with smuggling dope, everybody knew he'd been doing it for years. Not that I'm blaming him, mind you. If a man can smuggle cocaine and get away with it, good luck to him, say I. The only point I'm trying to make is that we are hardly a family that can afford to put on dog and sneer at honest suitors to our daughter's hands. Speaking for myself, I consider that we are very lucky to have the chance of marrying even into eel jellying circles. Now, if you miss one sentence in all of that, you don't get the eel jellying circles laugh. One syllable. I swear to God, it's true.
It really is.
Because they lose faith. They lose faith in your self-confidence up there on stage.
And but you have it. You're up there all by yourself, and you just go.
You just move on.
You just move on.
Okay, we haven't got that. Let's move on to the next. And you hope they don't accumulate. I've often thought, if you wanted to completely sabotage a Broadway opening night, go to an early preview of a Neil Simon play, for example. Figure out every single essential punchline. Go on opening night and just go. Every time there's a punchline, that little line, that little sound could completely destroy the evening. There
That's a
would be
pretty
no laughter.
wicked idea that you just gave somebody.
I know. Well, if it happens, they can blame me.
All right.
So I'm interested in the way you have been taking this around the country, 30-some cities.
Yeah.
What kinds of venues are you playing in? Are they large theaters? Are they community auditoriums? What are they?
They have been anywhere from about 300 seats to 2,000 seats.
Does it play totally differently depending on the size?
More similar than different. You'd be amazed. What's the most key thing is terrific sound. They have to get it. They have to get everything. They're both extremely literary pieces and brilliant literary pieces, one in an American vernacular and one in several different English accents. And then there's me just chatting conversationally.
And doing amazing sound effects.
Well, yeah, that's right, and haircut.
The haircut, you noted it.
That was my lead. I mean,
Yeah, the
I was
Foley.
trying to figure out how to spell the sounds you were making, and I really couldn't. I tried like 10 different spellings
Yeah.
of. How do you spell it? What is that in the script?
Every
even?
cut of the hair of this
It's not in the
yes.
script.
not in the
I
script.
do all of it.
Oh, it's
I mean,
fabulous.
haircut is such a masterpiece. There's no stage directions at all. It's nothing but the words, but it could have been written to perform with stage directions, with sound effects, everything. That has been my own bright idea, turning it into.
So your father didn't read it with sound effects?
Not at all.
But had you done it without the sound effects?
Yeah, the sound
Yes.
effects have crept in
Yes,
over the
yes.
last several performances. People have gradually said, "Oh, that was so cool when you made that little sound." Well, give me an inch and I'll take a mile.
Now, I want to bring up here your book, Drama.
Yes.
Your autobiography, and you talk at more length about your father and his sort of hard scrabble theater life
Yeah.
that led to your being in the theater all your life, and then it climaxes with him sort of telling you, I want you to tell this story, that he kind of expresses to you that he's been nothing, that you're the success,
Yeah.
and you come back to him in it.
Yeah, it was very near the end of the book. It was during that month when I was helping them out, taking care of them, and he was quite infirm. He was 86 years old. And he was depressed the way I think a lot of people who act for a living get depressed. You end up at that age and you assume that everybody's forgotten everything you do, because in fact, they have. What we do is very exciting. It's a big deal right now. And bit by bit, it's gone forever. And there's nothing wrong with that as long as you accept it. Don't kid yourself. They even forget the movie roles you've done. Well, he reached the end of his life. We were talking conversationally about what I'd done, and he said, you've had a career of great achievement. I myself did not. I did not really achieve anything in my life. And I just stopped him. My mother was in the kitchen. He and I were talking. I said, "Dad, I'm not going to let you say that. You had an amazing life, an amazing career. You gave about 1,000 actors their first job. You made hundreds of thousands of people experience Shakespeare for the first time. Everything I am and everything I've done is you. You're my hero. I'm not going to let you say that." It was very emotional. And he just listened and listened. And he finally turned and said, "Did you hear that, Sarah?" It was like, it's so touching.
It's interesting, though, with this show, which is, whether literally or not, dedicated to him. I mean, it's sort of instigated by him and is a tribute to what he gave you. But now, taking it as you have on the road, you're sort of recreating his own peripatetic life in the theater, and restoring a part of American theater that's mostly gone. This sort of barnstorming, one-man show sort of thing.
Well, it was quite unwitting. I was kind of following the template of my friend Mandy Patinkin, who's been doing music that way. I even work with his same tour booking operation. It sort of dawned on me as I was doing it, this is what people used to do. Mainly because I was in many of the venues where people used to play. old opera houses in Lexington, Kentucky, Pittsfield, Galveston, where the stagehands would brag about Harry Houdini performing there. Or
I'm sorry, were you in a time warp?
that's how I felt. And because these were
How old were these
These
stagehands?
were old. Well, they were several generations past, but they were still bragging about
Because
it
he'd been there.
because that time has passed.
Houdini was good.
They're still talking about him in Lexington.
But you're giving people that opportunity to see an actor of your caliber
Well,
live.
a lot of these playhouses, they're hard up for material because nobody does this
Yeah.
anymore.
Yeah.
Hal Holbrook, for many, many years, did his Mark Twain, and his poster would be up absolutely everywhere. So it was an unusual thing, and I don't know how much more of it I've got in me. It's not.
Is it particularly taxing?
It's just, it interrupts your life. I mean, it was definitely a sideline. In a given year, I would only do it 5 or 6 times. It wasn't like I was spending a year on the road the way they used to do.
Yeah.
That's how they used to perform. Not to mention vaudeville, where they would perform 5 times a day
Oh, my goodness.
in some of these same houses.
And now here you are on Broadway. We're almost out of time, but I do want to bring up one of your roles that is not going to be quickly forgotten at all. You played Winston Churchill in The Crown. You won the Emmy Award. And, of course, we have Gary Oldman's
Yes.
Churchill. And
Very
even
quickly
we
eclipsing
have
me,
the
I might.
awful movie that Brian Cox made about Churchill. But why do you think that Churchill's back with us now so powerfully? Do you think that there's a reason why he's so much in the zeitgeist now?
I'm not sure there is a specific reason.
Oh,
I mean,
yes, there is.
Well, certainly leadership is a gigantic issue right now. But a lot of these things were well underway before we had a leadership crisis, which indeed we're having right now. I do think that's one reason why these things are so stunning. You see courage and clarity and intelligence and intent. They are in short supply right now. And Churchill and FDR, I think they embody that. Probably next year it'll be all FDR.
What do you think, Jesse?
John said it. It's leadership, and it has 5 letters and ends in rump.
I find myself consoled in times of upheaval by his focus and beating off the bad guy, saying, that's the bad guy, and we have to stand up to him.
Well, the other thing is, he was such an astounding character. And in his way, I remember making this comparison in London and everybody blanched. But there was something very impulsive and bold and almost crazy about Churchill, which in a nutty sense reminds you of Trump. It went, one of them, England needed it so badly and it was so clear and there was such intention there.
Well, the flip side of sensibilities, of
Yeah,
course.
it was
of
just
course.
sort of the dark.
opposite. Although I love the fact that Winston Churchill never drew his own bath, ever. Yeah. There are little things like that.
Yeah.
So, Jesse, we have 1 minute left, Jesse and Donna.
Third Rock from the Sun.
Well, I guess I just-
best episode of Third Rock from the Sun.
My favorite?
Yes.
I loved it when he wanted to know what they were talking about in a women's consciousness group. So he dressed up in drag and embedded himself. That was my favorite.
Then that makes me think about The World According to Garp,
Yeah.
the drag.
Actually, I've performed in drag 5 or 6 times now. Played Margaret Thatcher on Saturday Night Live, Roberta Muldoon, M. Butterfly. I ended up in drag. I have this curious trifecta. I have played in drag 5 or 6 times, performed nude about 5 times, and I have played my own identical twin 5 times now. Now, how many actors can make that claim?
Damn few, damn few. You know, when I first became aware of you, you were on staff at WBAI.
That's right.
Doing radio
Were
plays.
you there?
I was at the other end of the radio
You were
listening to you.
To cold reading?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
What was
yes.
that?
It was a sort of part-time job when I couldn't get any acting work, doing drama and satire programming for WBAI. We did political satire and sort of goon show, Monty Python kind of stuff. But we also read entire plays, completely cold. I would just assemble all these actors, and we would do As You Like It, or Lady Windermere's Fan, or Man and Superman.
Cold.
We would do anything. And we just sort of assumed, well, nobody's listening to this. Who cares?
We were there, and your love of the film.
It was really fun, but
Yeah.
it was a mess. I mean, we did Women Beware Women, a Jacobean
God, yes.
tragedy, and it was a mess. And when we did Lady Windermere's Fan, we ran out of time. They had to put the news on, so we didn't do the last act. And we thought, well, what the heck? Nobody's noticing. People went crazy. They had been listening to us stumble our way through Oscar Wilde.
And they had no idea that the end had been written. They went, when will the next part of this serial come out?
Well, speaking of running out of time, tragically we have, but
It's
John,
such fun to talk to the
John,
three of you.
yeah, thank you so much, John Lithgow. Thank you so much, Jesse Green.
Best
coach
time I've ever had with a critic. On
A
time.
low bar, but thank you.
of the New York Times, and thank you so much, Donna Hanover of Arts in the City.
I was happy to be here today.
A pleasure, a pleasure. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
What fun.
Thank you. Our thanks to the Friends of Theater Talk for their significant contribution to this production. Theater Talk is made possible in part by the Frederick Lowe Foundation, the Corey and Bob Dinelli Charitable Fund, the Noel Coward Foundation, Carrie J. Fries, the Dorothy Strelson Foundation, and the New York City Department of Cultural Affairs.
We welcome your questions or comments for Theater Talk. Thank you,